In the modern market of automotive confusion, so many vehicles try to be multiple things at once and fit into as many criteria as possible at the same time, sometimes even at the expense of misleading the general consumer. Case in point, how many SUVs do you know that are labeled as sport? And they're usually neither sporty, nor are they even the top trim. Another one of these offenders is the Lexus ES350 F Sport. The F Sport for Lexus is almost as misleading as the M badges on non-M BMW cars. But money talks, and the illusion of sportiness sells exceptionally well, even in the luxury sedan segment. But despite all the badging and the Sport Plus mode and the sporty adaptive suspension, as well as this tin can aluminum trim on the interior, it still knows exactly what it is. It stays true to its nature, which is being the entry-level luxury sedan for a reasonable price that is comfortable, cushy, quiet, and as reliable and as dependable as a modern car gets. It has the ancient but absolutely bulletproof 3.5-liter V6 engine up front, producing 302 horsepower and 267 pound-feet of torque. The engine is paired with an 8-speed automatic transmission with the power going to the front wheels only. This is what the Lexus ES has always been for 30 years now, a V6 powered front-wheel drive luxury sedan. The interior of the ES350 is an absolutely wonderful place to be. All high-touch areas are covered in some sort of pleasant-feeling material, whether it be leather or leatherette or alloy or aluminum. Even this matte textured plastic feels fantastic. Everywhere you look and everything you touch feels as solid as a rock. The build quality, fit and finish are absolutely excellent. If you're looking for cheap feeling materials, you will find them. There's the cheap feeling plastic up here and just right under the infotainment screen. But other than that, everything you touch on a daily basis feels fantastic and solid. It feels like it's worth the price that you're paying for the car. And the price is a very important factor when talking about one of these vehicles. For 2020, the base price of the ES350 was $45,000. $47,000 would get you the hybrid model, the ES300H, with about 100 less horsepower and about half the fuel economy of the ES350 with the V6 engine. For 2021 and 22, the base price is around $49,000. But this particular vehicle is also equipped with the $7,100 F Sport 2 package. That's a lot of money for a package. But you also get a lot of cool stuff for the price. We get wireless charging in the armrest compartment. We get premium triple beam LED headlamps. We get a rear spoiler, of course, adaptive variable suspension, adaptive front lighting system, the simply lovely 17-speaker Mark Levinson premium surround sound system. We have the 3-spoke F-Sport steering wheel. We get larger wheels. We get 19-inch wheels on some low-profile tires. We get these F-Sport New Looks seats that are fantastic. They look great, they feel great, they're very comfortable and just supportive enough. Simply a lovely seat to be in. I really like them. And we also get the 12.3-inch infotainment screen as opposed to the 8-inch that's in the base trim. We also get this tin can trim in the interior, this aluminum trim. I don't like it. It doesn't look high-end. It looks pretty cheap. I would lose it. I'd prefer some wood trim instead, but sport means aluminum rather than wood in a lot of cases in modern cars. And we also get the 10-inch heads-up display. Also, stereotypically, a Lexus ES is known to attract the older crowd, and Lexus simply doubles down on that, and I absolutely love it. The reason I'm saying that is, in contrast to a lot of the modern cars that to perform a lot of the core functions, you have to go into the infotainment screen. It's some sort of touchscreen button or icon or haptic feedback slider thing. In the Lexus ES350, core functions can be performed with buttons, and I absolutely love it, as it should be in all cars. I want my HVAC controls as buttons. I don't want to go into the infotainment screen to change the direction of the airflow. That is absolutely ridiculous and is simply not user-friendly, and is more difficult to use, and is more cumbersome, and is more dangerous when you're driving. It's more distracting as well. In the ES350, the HVAC controls are buttons. Same with the steering wheel. The buttons feel great. They are beautifully laid out. They're very simple to use, very logical, beautiful ergonomics. Absolute treat to use them. Big buttons, no guesswork here. You're rarely confused about what's going on or how to get to a specific infotainment menu item. The ES350 even retains the CD player. I believe even in the 2022 model, it still has a CD player. That's how you know Lexus knows their core audience very, very well. Some of my other personal highlights of this interior are this gauge cluster that has a movable tachometer, and it is an absolute thing of beauty, and it fascinates me every time. It's an old trick, it's an old feature, but I really love how fascinating it is just watching the whole thing move. It is so cool, and no other car has that to my knowledge. Even though it's digital, the fact that the whole thing moves through space is absolutely incredible. When you put the dial up top here, the so-called Shrek ears, into Sport Plus mode, the whole thing turns white, and the rev limiter is very clearly marked as very red, and it gives you this sporty look and feel, even though the car is not inherently that sporty. The other highlight is this infotainment screen that is wonderful and looks great and is very crisp and high resolution. Absolutely love it. The biggest problem with it though is that it's not touchscreen for 2020 model year. Now, it became touchscreen after multiple complaints from the consumers. It became touchscreen for 2022 year model, and the screen is actually moved closer to the driver to be able to reach it. Now for 2020, we are stuck with this terrible haptic feedback trackpad that is an absolute pain to use. It is worse than the CX-5 infotainment, to be honest. It is a very good looking infotainment, but the trackpad is just, I hate it. There's not much to say about it. It is haptic feedback. It kind of just punches in your finger every time you touch it to let you know that, hey, you have chosen something, or you are moving, or you're changing the selection, but it is just a very cumbersome infotainment to use, and I'm not gonna get too deep into it. There are videos from other creators that go very deep into the infotainment, but there's not much to say here. I just really don't like it. But we do get Android Auto and Apple CarPlay as standard, and I have zero issues with that. Well, minus the trackpad, of course, but other than that, everything else works really well. When we come to the back, the cargo space and the trunk is huge. It's genuinely big. But the big problem with the cargo capacity is that the rear seats do not fold down, infamously. I guess Lexus just assumes that some old folk just don't get that active, so they don't need any sports equipment to go through. But we do get a little opening, I guess for skis maybe, but other than that, it could be a deal breaker for some. But where the ES350 truly shines is behind the wheel. As soon as you get in the car, as soon as you roll up the windows, you start up the car, all you hear is the faint humming of the engine. You hear the AC blowing in your face. You hear kind of your hand rustling, your arm rustling against the leather, and that's really all you hear. And when we start moving, the ES350 just soaks up the bumps so well, especially on this gravel road. All I'm feeling is just some minor vibration in my body. Other than that, it's just a smooth sailing. One important thing to point out is that the F-Sport package adds the larger wheels and the low-profile tires, and they really don't do this car justice in the comfort department at all. It really begs a question whether you even need an F-Sport package on a vehicle like this, because I think it would strongly, genuinely benefit more from some cushier sidewall tires, some more comfortable ride. It doesn't need sporty suspension. It doesn't need large wheels and low-profile tires. It doesn't need performance attributes. This vehicle is not meant for any of that. You get a bit more of a confidence inspiring driving experience with the F-Sport package, but at the same time, nobody will drive this car hard. Nobody should be driving this car hard. This car is really just for getting on the highway quickly, getting up to speed, overtaking, and just cruising. And that's really all it's for. It is to ensure the comfort for the driver for as long as possible and do it as reliably as possible. The suspension is a bit bumpy right now, but the car is also doing a fantastic job at keeping me as comfortable as possible. And I absolutely thank it for that. And it is a joyful experience knowing that it will take, for the most part, it will take whatever you throw at it in the city / mild gravel road scenarios. Obviously, you wouldn't want to take it anywhere further than that, but in the city scenarios, at least the trims with thicker sidewall tires and the more comfortable suspension, you can throw anything you want at them. As I've already mentioned, with the F-Sport package, you do get these Shrek ears, and one of the ears, you can use that for to regulate the driving modes. We have the normal, eco, sport, and sport plus. Right now we are in sport plus, and I'm gonna turn off the traction control and the stability control to show you what the front wheel drive 300 horsepower really does. Now let's do a quick launch. 302 horsepower, 267 pound-feet of torque, all to the front wheels, up a hill. Not a good combination, but here we go. Traction control off. Just a pure burnout until the second gear. And the gauge cluster is screaming at me, turn the traction control back on. It is off, you're going to die. It will constantly remind you that your traction control is off, and it is a bit frustrating, it's a bit annoying. It's unnecessary, but I understand why. Now, I also want to touch on this engine and the transmission. So the transmission knows exactly what it's doing. It's not exactly confused. It is very predictable, and the shifts are very snappy. I like that. When you give it, give the gas pedal a little bit of a stab, it just downshifts almost right away, and it just puts you in the gear that you'd want to be, and it's perfectly adequate to just accelerate and overtake. It has more than enough power for that, and honestly, I don't think it should have more power. There's no reason. If you're putting more power into an ES, at that point you would have to make it all-wheel drive as well. And speaking of the all-wheel drive aspect of this vehicle, well, or should I say the absence of it, a lot of the journalists and a lot of the people, the general consensus is that ES350 should be all-wheel drive because of how heavy the vehicle is and because of how much power and torque is going to the front wheels. It is not entirely usable, and it cannot put the power down. It doesn't even have a limited slip differential. So it's kind of a lot of power is just being wasted, and you're just burning the tires if you choose to hone it a bit. But for 2022, Lexus did come up with an all-wheel drive version. It is a 4-cylinder all-wheel drive version. I believe it's an ES250 all-wheel drive. And the biggest problem with that vehicle is I think it has something like 200 horsepower from a turbo 4-cylinder. Now, obviously with the 4-cylinder, you will not get the smoothness of the drive. It's borderline impossible. This V6 is truly a wonderful engine. It is so smooth, and the power delivery is just buttery smooth. You give it a little bit of gas and it just wafts up to speed. It is so pleasant, and it's so refined, and there's barely any vibrations from the engine at all. You barely feel the acceleration, you barely feel the RPMs rising. And it is, you also, when you floor it, you're accompanied with this beautiful V6 howl. I love this engine for multiple reasons. I love this engine because of how reliable it is, how ancient it is, and how tried and proven it is, and how you know exactly this engine will outlast everybody in your family and will probably outlast all of your other cars that you have right now. It's a beautiful thing, and there's something to be said about an engine that has been in production for so long, and it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Lexus has just been improving on it without trying to make it any sort of cutting edge luxury vehicle with all the new technology and new bells and whistles. No, Lexus always strived to create and keep making the ES350 a very reliable and very dependable luxury car. And you can always count on the ES350 to do exactly that. It is very predictable. Boring, sure. Uneventful, uninspiring, sure. But it is exactly that. You know exactly what you're getting with an ES350. And I think that's a beautiful thing in itself. As I digressed, going back to the ES250 all-wheel drive, the biggest problem with that vehicle is I haven't driven one, full disclaimer, but on paper, the biggest problem with the all-wheel drive version, the 4-cylinder, is I'm assuming chances are it is not as nice to drive because it has 100 less horsepower, a lot less torque, and when you look at the fuel economy, a very important thing when you're looking at ES350, at least for me, when you look at a fuel economy for the ES250 all-wheel drive, it is not that much better than the V6 front-wheel drive version that we're in right now. I believe the difference is 22 miles per gallon and 25 miles per gallon, and in the liters per 100 kilometers, that really translates in only about a 1 liter per 100 kilometer difference. And I am willing to pay 1 extra liter of gas per 100 kilometers for 100 extra horsepower. It's fine that it's not all-wheel drive, but that's also the beauty, because if you made the V6 all-wheel drive, it would be a lot less fuel efficient. And that's a very important topic that I want to touch on again, the fuel efficiency and the fuel grade of the ES350. Currently, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, from all the major manufacturers, the ES350 and the Lexus RX 350 are the only luxury vehicles currently on sale for the luxury market, specifically luxury vehicles that run on regular gas and do not require premium gas. And you might be saying, oh yes, but if you're buying a luxury vehicle, if you can afford to buy a luxury vehicle, you can afford to put premium gas in it. Why? I'm wrapped up in all sorts of luxuries right now. I am incredibly comfortable. I am driving a luxury sedan, mid-sized luxury sedan with 302 horsepower, 267 pound-feet of torque. I have all the luxuries I would ever need. I'm incredibly comfortable. My butt's warm. The seats are super comfortable. It is really quiet in here. I'm very insulated, and I can put regular gas in this car. And it is very reasonable on gas for what it is. 11 to 12 liters per 100 kilometers. I think that's very reasonable. Same with the RX 350. It is a bit more hungry and a bit more thirsty at the gas pump, but it is also a bigger and heavier vehicle. Now, I can afford to purchase a luxury car, a competitor of an ES350. But why would I pay money for a vehicle, especially if you're cost conscious, right? Why would I be paying money for a vehicle and also spending $300, $400, $500 a month on gas alone, gassing up that, it pains me to say, gassing up that Stinger that's gonna be drinking 13, 14 liters per 100 kilometers in the city, and premium gas dropping over $100 per tank on something else if I can just get this, if I'm solely looking for luxury. If you want to go a step further, you can get the hybrid, 4-cylinder hybrid, Combined horsepower is, again, still about 100 horsepower less than this one. But it will be taking regular gas, and it will be also drinking and consuming about half the gas that the ES350 with the V6 does. And I apologize for this long rant, but it is so important to me personally because I have driven my whole life, for the most part, I've driven vehicles that require premium gas, and I cry myself to sleep every time. The Miata, the Civic Si had a recommended premium gas. My Acura RL, my beloved 2010 Acura RL, it was an absolute monster, absolute gas monster. It was consuming 14-15 liters per 100 kilometers, all-wheel drive, 300 horsepower, big, heavy vehicle, and it was taking premium. And that thing was practically bankrupting me at every gas pump. I was paying over $100 per tank oftentimes, and I would gas it up sometimes more than once a week. It was rough. It was genuinely rough, and I'm still traumatized from that. Now, going back to the ES350, I have a big gripe with the heads-up display. Now, this thing is crooked at all times, and I have rotated it on a myriad of occasions, and you can rotate it clockwise or counterclockwise, and this particular one, it could just be a calibration issue with this particular car, but I never, even though I rotated all the way counterclockwise, I promise, I'm not crazy. It's not exactly horizontal still. It's a little bit off, and it's throwing me off every time. Not to mention, in daylight, it is not very bright. Sometimes it just blends right in with this white or light gray pavement, and this is maximum brightness as well. It's just not very good. The ES350 is truly a unicorn in the modern world. In 2022, with all the electrification and everything turning into a hybrid or a four-cylinder turbo, the ES350 is kind of a dinosaur, to be honest. And I think we need to protect the ES350 at all costs, because there are fewer and fewer vehicles like this that you can truly rely on, that are ancient technology, that are as reliable and as dependable as they come. Some would even say the ES350 is the most reliable vehicle ever made in the car history. I've heard statements like that. But I think we need to protect these cars at all costs. The ES350 and the RX350 are really, I think, the last of its kind. I don't know if we will see the next generation of the ES350 and the RX350 with the same engine, with the same drivetrain. I don't know if they will. There's a chance they might be a four-cylinder turbos or just straight-up hybrids. It's very hard to tell, and the tides are changing very quickly, quicker than some of us are even realizing. And in these turbulent and ever-changing times, I think the ES350 is one of those cars that you need to cherish. Understand what it is. Don't dismiss it for what it's not. Understand what the purpose of it is. Understand the demographic, and understand the beauty in the simplicity of it. Love it for what it is. Don't hate it for what it's not. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.